4 Apache sisters surrounded the lone cowboy at the edge of the river, and the words that left the oldest sister's mouth hit him like a bullet. "Have sex," she said in careful, accented English. "You are alone, we are 4, that is what men like you want, isn't it?" For a second, the world went silent. The river kept running, the cottonwoods kept whispering in the evening wind, but inside the cowboy's chest, everything stopped. His hand hovered near his holster, then slowly dropped away. He wasn't staring at their painted faces or the knives at their hips. He was staring at the hurt in their eyes, a hurt he recognized because it lived in him too. Cal Hartley had ridden into that canyon looking for water and a night's rest. He'd found 4 Apache sisters and a sentence that tasted like every ugly thing he'd ever seen men like him do. Cal had seen what happened when men talked like that. He'd ridden with soldiers once, young and stupid, believing in orders and flags. He'd seen villages burned, women shoved, children hiding behind thin arms that couldn't stop a rifle butt. He'd watched, and sometimes he hadn't watched, because looking away felt easier than facing what he'd become part of. He hadn't worn a uniform in years. He'd left the army, left the noise, bought a small, broken-down ranch far from the towns, far from the forts, far from everyone. But the ghosts rode with him. They sat at his campfire, lay beside him at night, whispered when the wind got too loud. Now 4 pairs of eyes pinned him to the riverbank, waiting, measuring what kind of man he was. The oldest sister stood in front. She had a long black braid down her back and a single white feather tied into it. Her eyes were sharp, steady. There was no blush on her cheeks, no shyness in the way she held his gaze. "My name is Nayland," she said. "It means water. You are on our land." Cal slowly raised his hands where they could see them. "I don't want trouble," he said quietly. "Just water for my horse and a place to sleep. I'll be gone by sunrise." The youngest sister stepped to Nayland's side, fire in her eyes. Toani had learned that the world was not as gentle as her father promised. Her English was rougher, but her anger was clear. "Men say they only want water," she spat. "Then they want more, they take, they laugh. They use words like the ones I said. We heard them many times." Cal's stomach twisted. He didn't move. His horse, Daisy, stood behind him, reins loose, ears flicking nervously. The third sister, taller and quieter, watched him like he was a rattlesnake she wasn't sure was going to strike. Ahioka had learned to listen to what people didn't say. She tilted her head. "You did not smile when Nayland said those words," she observed. "Most white men smile, or their eyes change. Yours did not." The 4th sister stayed a little behind the others, her hands wrapped around a small medicine pouch hanging from her neck. Her gaze was softer, but there was steel beneath it. Naira knew that sometimes the most dangerous thing a person carried was their own shame. "You look like a man who has seen many wrong things," she said quietly, "maybe done some." Cal swallowed. "More than I care to remember," he admitted. Nayland took a step closer. The late afternoon sun brushed gold over their faces, bringing out the shadows under their eyes, the tiredness that didn't belong on women so young. "Those words I said," she asked, "do they make you angry?" "They make me sad," Cal replied, "and ashamed." "Why ashamed?" Toani demanded. "You did not say them, we did." "Because men who look like me taught you that's what we want," he said, his voice low. "Because someone thought they could talk to you like you were not human, like you were things." The sisters fell silent. Even the river seemed to hush. Nayland studied him for a long moment. "Sit," she said finally, nodding toward a flat rock near the water. "If you run, we can catch you. If you fight," her eyes flicked to his gun, "we are more than 4. Cal believed her. He lowered himself slowly onto the rock, palms still open, trying to breathe past the tightness in his chest. The sisters moved, circling him, but not like wolves, more like judges. He realized, suddenly, what this was. This wasn't a trap to hurt him. This was a test. Nayland crouched in front of him, resting her arms on her knees like a tired warrior. "Men from the fort came here years ago," she said. "They said they wanted to talk. They said they wanted peace. They said they wanted to civilize. We learned that word too. Her mouth twisted. We learned many words, too many. Cal's throat felt dry. He knew this story even before she told it. Every burned-out village had the same bones. They talked in English, Toani added. They thought we did not understand. We did not all of it, but we learned their favorite word for what they wanted from our women, from our sisters, from our mothers. Her voice shook just once. Sex, she whispered with disgust. Always that word, like hunger, like taking water from a river that was theirs by right. They laughed when they said it. Cal closed his eyes for a moment. Faces flashed in his mind. Drunk soldiers, wagons, smoke. He forced himself to look at them again. I'm sorry, he said simply. Naira's brow furrowed. You were there, she asked, not accusing yet, but close. Not here, Cal said, but somewhere like here, too many somewheres, too many times I didn't do enough to stop it, sometimes anything to stop it. He had never said it out loud like that. The words felt like stones rolling out of his chest and falling at their feet. Ahioka knelt down beside Naylan, her sharp eyes softer now. You left them, she guessed, the soldiers. I left when I couldn't stand my own reflection, he said, bought a small place, tried to live quiet, tried to forget. Does it work? Naira asked gently. No, Cal answered, it doesn't. For the first time, something like understanding passed between them. Naylan straightened. Good, she said. A man who forgets is more dangerous than one who remembers. So why am I here? Cal asked, not defensively, just tired. Why test me with those words? Because we heard something, Naylan said. We heard that a white cowboy lives out past the Cottonwood Ridge. Alone, no family, no army, no cattle baron telling him what to do, just him and the land. There are rumors, Ahioka added. They say you don't drink with the others, that you walked away from soldiers and from men who hurt women. They say you talk to your horse more than you talk to people. Toani snorted. They say you are strange. Most of that is fair, Cal admitted. Naira's fingers tightened on her medicine pouch. We need a strange man, she said, one who is not owned by the fort or by the men with too much land and too much hate in their bellies. Cal frowned. What do you need me for? You're for. You're skilled, you're clearly not afraid of much. He glanced at their weapons. And you're armed. Naylan exchanged a look with her sisters. The air around them shifted, the way it does before a storm when the sky hasn't turned dark yet, but the birds already know. Our people are being moved, Naylan said quietly, again. The word moved carried the weight of pushed, hurt, lied to, and hunted. The rich rancher to the south says our land is his now, Ahioka said. He has papers with lines and numbers. Men in uniforms believe the papers, not the people. They say soon soldiers will come, Toani added. They will offer fake kindness. They will bring wagons and ropes and chains and say they are relocating us for our own good. Naira's eyes shimmered. We will be put where the river is dry and the soil is dead, she whispered, where our children will forget how the wind sounds in this canyon. Cal felt a familiar weight settle over his shoulders, the weight of injustice, old and repeating itself like a bad song. But this time, he wasn't wearing a blue coat. This time, he was being asked something else. What do you think I can do? He asked. Naylan looked him straight in the eye. You speak their language better than we do, she said. You know how their minds twist. You know their rules. You know how to stand between a gun and the thing it wants to destroy. Toani stepped forward, fierce and afraid at the same time. We need someone to stand with us when the soldiers come, she said. Someone they might listen to for one breath, long enough for truth to get through. That's why we said those words, Ahioka explained. To see what kind of man you are. Are you a man who takes when there is fear in the air, or are you a man who stops taking? Cal looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred, the hands of a man who had done both. I don't know if they will listen to me, he said. I'm nobody to them now. Naira moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. Maybe they won't listen, she said. Maybe they will laugh. But if you stand with us and they still hurt us, then we will know at least one man did not walk away. Then our children, if we have them, will know not all men were the same. Cal thought about nights alone on his ranch, staring at the ceiling, replaying screams he couldn't erase. He thought about the way he'd come to accept that his life would just be that, feeding horses, mending fences, waiting to die a little less haunted. Maybe this was the second chance he didn't know he'd been praying for. "All right," he said softly, "tell me everything, tell me about the rancher, the papers, the soldiers, what you've heard, then we'll figure out how to stand." Nalen's shoulders dropped a fraction, as if a weight shifted just a little. The sisters moved in, kneeling around him, not in a circle of judgment anymore, but in a small council by the river. They talked until the sun bled into the horizon and the sky went from gold to purple. Names, dates, threats, a letter the rancher had waved in their faces, a lieutenant who'd promised to handle the situation. Rumors of a deal made in some smoky room far from the canyon where no one could hear the river protesting. "Come to our camp," Naira said eventually. "Meet our mother, our uncle, the children. Let them see your face before you stand with us. We have learned not to trust words without seeing eyes." Cal nodded. "That's fair." He stood slowly, and they walked together through the darkening canyon. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man running from his past. He felt like a man walking into something, even if it scared him. The Apache camp was small but alive. Children darted between tents, laughter threaded with worry. Women cooked over low fires, the smell of corn and smoke hanging in the air. Older men sat in a half-circle, talking in low voices, their eyes sharp and tired. When Cal appeared, conversations faltered. Hands tightened on tools, on knives, on each other. Nalen stepped forward, her voice steady. "This is Cal Hartley," she said in Apache first, then in English. "He is the one we tested. He did not smile when we spoke the soldier's words. He apologized for things he did not do here, but did elsewhere. He will stand with us." Her mother, a woman with the kind of strength that grows through storms, walked slowly up to Cal. Ada had lost a husband, a brother, and too many neighbors to trust easily. She studied his face, his posture, the way he held his hat respectfully in his hands. "You carry ghosts," she said in halting English. "Yes, ma'am," he answered. "Do you want to give them new stories?" she asked. Cal didn't know you could say something like that. It landed inside him like a seed in soil that had waited too long for rain. "Yes," he said, "I do." She nodded once, then "Eat with us," she said. "Tomorrow we talk." That night, Cal sat by their fire, sharing simple food and complicated silence. Naira explained some of the stories they told in their language, stories of mountains and eagles, of rivers that remembered footsteps long after people were gone. At some point, a little boy fell asleep against Cal's side, his small hand curled in the worn fabric of Cal's coat. Cal sat still, hardly breathing, overwhelmed by the trust of that tiny weight. He realized suddenly how much he wanted a world where this boy could grow up without learning that same English word Nalen had thrown at him like a weapon. The next days were a blur of planning and dread. Cal rode to town, walked straight into the busy, dusty main street like a man with nothing left to lose. He found the rancher, Elias Crowder, a big man with a bigger ego, sitting on the porch of the saloon, boots up, hat tipped low. "Crowder," Cal said, his voice flat. "Hartley," Crowder drawled, not even bothering to sit up. "Heard you been talking to our neighbors in the canyon. That's smart, you think." "I think it's human," Cal replied, "which is more than I can say for most of what I've seen you do." Crowder's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Cowboy. You ain't army, you ain't law. You're just a man with a tired horse and a patch of dirt that could blow away in the next wind." Cal resisted the urge to punch him. "That patch of dirt is mine," he said, "and the canyon is theirs." Crowder waved a paper in the air. "Says who?" he taunted. "These papers say the land's mine now, got signatures and everything." "Signatures from men who have never heard the river," Cal answered, "or looked a child in the eye before sending soldiers their way." The conversation didn't end well. It ended with Crowder's mocking laugh and the promise that soldiers would be riding out to settle the matter by the end of the week. When Cal rode back to the canyon and told them, the camp went bone quiet. "What will you do?" Ahioka asked. "I'll stand in front of them," Cal said, "on my horse, in their way. I'll tell them the truth, loud enough that at least one man among them hears it. Sometimes all it takes is one to say no." Toani's jaw clenched, "And if none of them listen," she challenged. "Then they'll have to ride through me," Cal replied, "and I'm stubborn." Naira's eyes filled with tears. She blinked away. "Why?" she whispered. "These are not your people. This is not your blood." Cal looked around the camp. The children, the mothers, the old men who'd already seen too many endings. "Because I was there when others didn't stand," he said. "Because I watched doors kicked in and fires started and did too little. Because I've spent years praying for a way to do more than say, 'I'm sorry,' to the empty air." He met each sister's gaze in turn. "And because you trusted me enough to ask," he finished, "that means something." The morning the soldiers came, the canyon was unnaturally still. The sound reached them first: hooves, metal, a man barking orders. Cal sat on Daisy at the mouth of the canyon, the Apache gathered behind him, silent but unbowed. Naylin and her sisters stood off to the side, close enough to be seen, far enough to grab the children if things went bad. Ada stood among the elders, her back iron straight. The soldiers rounded a bend and saw Cal first. The lieutenant at the front reined in. He was young, too young to have that many hard lines on his face already. "Hartley," he called, surprised. "What in blazes are you doing here?" Cal recognized him, Lieutenant James Porter. They'd ridden together once. Cal remembered a kid who'd flinched the first time someone screamed. "I could ask you the same," Cal answered. "We're here on official orders," Porter said. He held up papers. "These people are trespassing on land granted to Elias Crowder by federal authority. They're being relocated for their own safety and the security of settlers." "What about their safety?" Cal asked. "Who decided Crowder's comfort matters more than their lives?" Porter shifted in his saddle. "Stand aside, Cal. I don't want trouble with you." "You already have trouble," Cal said calmly. "I'm just giving it a face." Behind him, children watched, eyes too old. "Do you remember Ember Creek?" Cal asked suddenly. Porter's shoulders stiffened. "Don't," he warned. "I will," Cal said softly, "because we were there. Remember the girl who stood in front of her little brother when the men went mad? Remember the way she stared at you, not me, not the captain, you, like maybe you'd help, and we didn't." Porter's jaw worked. "That has nothing to do with—" "It has everything to do with this," Cal cut in, "because this is the same thing with a different name: relocation, civilizing, protecting settlers. It's always the same song, James, different verse." A murmur went through the soldiers. Ember Creek was a story they all knew, whether they'd been there or not. "You think the reports don't haunt him?" one of the men muttered under his breath. Porter's face flushed. "You're obstructing federal authority," he snapped. "Last warning, Hartley." Cal took a breath. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed even. "I'm standing here because one day you'll be old," he said. "You'll be sitting by some fire or some stove, and you'll hear children laugh, and you'll remember today. You'll remember what you chose. I'm giving you a chance to choose something that won't hollow you out from the inside." For a long, long moment, no one moved. The birds in the cottonwoods started singing again, unaware that the world might be about to break. Behind Cal, Naylin stepped forward. She didn't speak English this time. She spoke her own language, voice ringing clear. "These children will remember this day too," she said to Cal, to the canyon, to the sky. "They will remember if anyone stood for them." Ada lifted her chin. "We cannot stop the river with our hands," she said, "but sometimes we can change where it goes." Porter looked at the faces behind Cal, the fear, the dignity, the quiet desperation. His hand trembled on the reins. Then in a small, almost broken voice he said, "Damn you, Cal." He turned to his men. Orders changed, he barked louder now. We're not relocating anyone today. We're here to observe and report. That's all, understood. The men exchanged uneasy looks. Crowder would be furious. The fort might be too. But something in Cal's words, in Nayland's steady gaze, had slipped into them like water through stone. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Cal exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Porter looked back at him. I can't promise this is over, he said quietly. Crowder has friends, people higher than me. I know, Cal replied, but you just bought these people time. Time is a kind of miracle. Porter shook his head as if to shake loose his conscience. I'll write the report, he said. I'll say the land's not suitable for Crowder's plans, that moving these people would cause unnecessary unrest. Maybe that'll slow things down. He hesitated, then added, you always were too stubborn for your own good. Maybe now it's finally useful, Cal said with a faint smile. The soldiers turned their horses. Dust rose, then settled as they retreated, smaller and smaller, until they were just a memory at the canyon's edge. Silence fell again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. The kind that comes after a storm passes just to the side of you, close enough to feel the wind, but not the lightning. Children started laughing again, women exhaled, men unclenched fists. Toani let out a whoop that startled even herself. He did it, she shouted, spinning in a circle. The strange cowboy did it. Ahioka smiled, a rare, full smile that reached her eyes. Not alone, she said, we all did. Naira walked up to Cal, tears on her cheeks, joy and grief tangled together. You stood, she said simply, when it mattered. Cal didn't know what to say. He shrugged, suddenly shy, staring down at his boots. Felt like the only thing I could live with, he mumbled. Ada approached then, placing a weathered hand over his heart. Some men think strength is taking, she said. We have seen that. Today you showed that strength is also standing, also saying enough, also using the fear inside you to protect instead of destroy. She smiled faintly. You have given my daughters a different story about men who look like you, she said. That is no small gift. Nayland stepped forward, the white feather in her hair catching the light. I used those bad words on you, she admitted, on purpose, to see your face, to push the worst picture in front of you and see if you would become it. Cal met her gaze. I know, he said, and I'm glad you did. Maybe I needed to prove to myself too that I'm not that man anymore. She nodded once, then held out her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it carried more weight than any contract in Crowder's world. Then from this day, she said, you walk as our friend, not as savior, not as owner, as friend. We stand for you when your ghosts get too loud. You stand for us when men like Crowder come again. Cal took her hand. Her grip was strong and steady. I can live with that, he said. The days that followed weren't magically easy. Crowder fumed, sent letters, made threats, but Porter's report slowed the machine. Other men in town, remembering Ember Creek or their own small shames, started quietly refusing to ride out when things felt wrong. And Cal kept riding to the canyon. He helped mend fences, taught some of the children a few words of English they could use for trade without swallowing their own language. In return, they taught him Apache words for friend, river, forgiveness, and begin again. At night, sometimes, Cal would sit by his own small fire on his little ranch and stare up at the stars. The ghosts still visited, but they didn't feel as heavy now. Some of them sat at the edge of the firelight, watching the new stories being born, stories of riders who turned their horses around, of women who tested men and found goodness instead of hunger, of a canyon that refused to forget its people. One evening, as the sun slipped low and painted the sky in colors that didn't have names in any language he knew, Cal rode back to the canyon and found the four sisters sitting by the river where they'd first met. Toani grinned when she saw him. We were talking about you, she said. Oh, Cal raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Maybe, Ahioka teased. We were saying that, For a man who talks to his horse more than to people, you talk a lot when it matters. Naira looked at him thoughtfully. We were also remembering that first day, she said, when I said you carried shame. I still do, Cal said, but it doesn't carry me anymore. Nailin picked up a smooth river stone and turned it in her fingers. We cannot change what the soldiers did, she said, or what men like Crowder still dream of doing, but we can choose how we meet them when they come, with fear alone or with each other. She tossed the stone into the water. Ripples spread outward, touching both banks. We chose each other, she said. That is what saved us. Cal watched the ripples fade. Maybe that's all kindness is, he said softly, choosing each other even when it's easier to look away. Naira smiled, slow and warm. You know what is funny, she mused. Those men who came before, the ones who taught us that ugly word, they thought that was all they were, all their power, all their manhood. She gestured around them, the trees, the river, the camp, the small, fragile piece. But look at what actually changed the world today, she said. Not that word, not that hunger. It was a man who decided not to use it. A man who chose to stand still instead of take. A man who came when four sisters called, not to do what men had always done, but to do what men seldom do. Cal felt something in his chest loosen, then settle, like a bird finally deciding this branch was safe to rest on. Maybe, he said quietly, that's the story that ought to be told. Not just that four Apache sisters surrounded a lone cowboy, but that when they did, and pushed the worst picture of him in his face, he refused to become it, Nailin finished. And together, Toani added, they wrote a better one. The river kept moving, carrying away old words, old pain, making room for new songs. Far from any fort or courthouse, in a canyon most maps didn't bother to name, four sisters and a cowboy sat by the water and learned the simplest, hardest truth. That sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose kindness when everyone expects cruelty. That sometimes the strongest stand is the one you take, not for yourself, but for someone else. And that no matter what you've done, no matter what ghosts ride with you, there is always one more chance to stand in front of harm instead of behind it. It doesn't erase the past, but it changes what happens next. And sometimes that is enough to turn shame into something quieter, something gentler, into a story you can live with, and maybe even someday be proud to tell.